Sekeres Price for Wednesday, June 26, 2024. We're coming to you from the Nation Network studio, built by Arbor Lee, here at the iconic Wall Center, downtown Vancouver. If you're recently engaged, looking for a perfect wedding venue, contact the Wall Center, sales@wallcenter.com, and let the Wall Center help plan your special day. Matt Sekeres alongside Blake Price, Grace Sass, hitting switches, conducting things. Big show coming up, all brought to you by Applewood Auto Group.
Applewood Infinity in Langley has the QX60s with lease rates from 0.99%. They're almost paying you to take it. Go and check it out. That's on all trims, by the way, so you can get yourself a fancy one. The 2024 QX60s at Applewood Infinity in Langley. Oh, it's an Infinity. They're all fancy, and it's all good at Applewood.
Which former Canucks should the Canucks sign in free agency? Chris Tanev, Tyler Toffoli, Tyler Mott, none of the above. You can vote Sekeres Price on Twitter or X. And also vote for Oliver Ekman-Larsson, Stanley Cup champion Oliver Ekman-Larsson on YouTube.
Would you sign?
You are allowed to sign a guy after you buy him out, believe it or not.
3-year deal, $2 million. Would you do it?
Oh. If Zadorov's gone, is he their plan B, C, D, E? Is there any hope in hell?
The thing is,
he sold his place in Kits, I heard.
He might get paid.
Well, he's going to get something.
Like,
he had a good season.
I think he gets $4 million AAV. I think he does.
On a 1-year deal?
However it stands, I would put the over-under on the AAV beside Ekman-Larsson's name at 4. Well, I'll put the over-under at 3.5, and I'll take the over.
Yeah, AFP Analytics has him at 3 years, $4.1 million per.
Boom. There you go.
Well, celebrating before the ball's in the hole.
Oh, are we going there right off the bat? No.
I voted Tyler Mott, and here's why. Because you're not going to regret his contract. It's going to be 1 year. It's going to be right around the league minimum.
Yep.
You need wingers. You need speed. You need penalty killers. He checks all those boxes. And again, you won't regret the contract. Boy, there are certain parts of Tyler Toffoli's game that I really like and really appreciate. And yeah, he has been a Canuck alongside Pettersson in the past, and I'd be quite interested to see how that goes again, particularly as the search for a appropriate winger for Pettersson continues. What I would be worried about with Tyler Toffoli is the term he's going to require and how that contract will look. AFP thinks he's going to be a $4 by $6 million player. He's 32 years old, and we're talking about a guy who's got a strong hockey IQ, really good in short areas, makes good puck decisions in those tight areas with either people hanging off him or people bearing down on him. Pretty good shooter, pretty accurate shooter. But I would worry what the player would look like beyond, say, the first couple of seasons. I think if you look, I'm big on 35 or younger. A 4-year deal takes Toffoli to age 36. I'd be willing to do that deal if he gave me a little bit of a break on the average annual value. But this is not a fast team. Toffoli's not a fast guy either. He's no longer a penalty killer. So there's a world where I could stomach a Toffoli contract, but on the right terms. In terms of Tanev, and I risk being mayor of Wrongville for a second time on a Chris Tanev extension because I didn't think there was a hope in hell that Calgary was going to get value out of the deal they signed Tanev to. I just felt like he was so brittle at the time that he left Vancouver here, played with such a reckless abandon that he was bound to get hurt more and more. That, you know, despite his age, he would be a lot older in terms of miles on the body, bumps, bruises, and injuries. I mean, as we've talked about, he leads the league in going back up the tunnel. But again, if Tanev is going to need a 4 or even 5 year, like he's 34 years old now, folks. I would love to see him in Vancouver on a 2-year deal, but I just don't think that's going to happen with what he can command, because it sounds like Dallas is interested. It sounds like the Senators are very interested. And we heard the Leafs are interested as well.
With both of the big names, I'm okay with a 1 or 2 year deal. That's just not the way unrestricted free agency works, unfortunately. You know, when we're evaluating all these players, and all these days leading up to free agency, it's not that I or you don't necessarily like the player. In a lot of cases, like the player a lot. Would love them to be on my team the next season. But that's not the way that it works. You have to sign them to a contract that, in a lot of cases, outruns when you expect them to be effective. And that's what you have to use as the calculus when you decide whether or not, do I want X player on my team? And so using all that criteria, Mott's got zero leverage right now. He's the perfect kind of player to be Linus Karlsson insurance. Like, if Linus Karlsson can't make this team, you need somebody to fill out the fourth line.
That's it.
And he's got a lot of tools that he can be a useful club in the bag, providing nobody on, I was going to say Utica. Where's the brain going there? Abbotsford can make the step up. And I do believe there will be somebody that surprises us from the Abbey crew that does make this team, one of the many. But I need somebody else.
I hear you in terms of insurance, and frankly, right now, Tyler Mott is better than the Abbey crew.
He's penciled in.
It's going to be incumbent on the Abbey crew to knock Tyler Mott out of the 12 forwards if they were to sign him. If they sign him, of course. And then here's the other thing: if that's the case, no worries. It's a good thing. You got a young player moving up. You know Tyler Mott's going to be fine as your 13th forward, right?
Yep.
You got no problem with that. Now, the points fell off the map for Mott last 9 in 69 games. He had 19 the previous year in 62 games, split between the Rangers and the Senators. So, and Blake makes another good point here. The calculus has changed a little, folks, in free agency this year because the cap is finally going up for the first time in a number of years. So, guys who are at this end of the roster, we've been accustomed the last couple of years to see them sign really short-term deals, in some cases really low money deals too. Like Bluger, I think, is a good example. I think in a regular cap world, Teddy Bluger would have got more than a 1-year deal last year.
Yeah.
Now he got a little more money from the Canucks, and this management group really liked him. So I think that helped float the salary. What was it, 1.9? But I think, in previous years, a guy like that who can play the middle and kill penalties, he probably gets a multi-year, no more than 2 or 3, but probably gets a multi-year. I think you're going to see that back this year, that these fourth liners, but maybe fourth liners with either a unique characteristic trait or with special teams utility, the third pair defenseman. I think you're going to see more 2-year deals for that profile of player.
We've already seen it. Liam O'Brien signs with the Coyotes a 3-year, $1 million deal.
And
like
again,
tuna.
Thought it was spicy tuna.
Spicy tuna, yeah.
And again, we had big tuna here. It didn't go well. Great.
But how often do you see a 3-year, $1 million cap hit deal?
But a couple of things there. He has a unique attribute.
He's an ass.
Like, he is just a total
professional ass.
Total jackass out there. The game here in January against the Vancouver Canucks, where little Liam O'Brien's in everybody's face.
The leprechaun.
He is kind of a leprechaun.
Biting the ankles of Zadorov.
He really is. He really is.
Fighting.
And I think with that guy, he's just so ecstatic to be in the NHL. You're going to give me a 3-year deal, $3 million? Oh, yeah, I'll sell myself short.
Who's our favorite example of the long-term weird deal? Is it on Long Island?
No, it's
Colton Sissons.
It's Colton Sissons. North Man's Colton Sissons.
Pierre Engvall.
Engvall's got one too.
Yeah.
Again, 8 years, $3 million AAV, and Sissons is in the 2s.
Where are you on Tanev? Like, beyond just you wish you could do a short-term deal. That's not going to be the case. Would you go 4 years on Tanev?
No. And here's the calculus for me on that one is, even if he, for the most part, has sidestepped the fragility of his later years as a Vancouver Canuck, and people have to crane their brains back to in the first few years of Chris Tanev's existence with the Canucks. Dave Tomlinson and I nicknamed him Gumby because he got pasted regularly and never got injured. He would get up and be like, oh my God, the guy cannot get hurt.
It's the damnedest thing.
And then all of a sudden, it was all made up for. All the years of being stapled and not being injured, he made up for it.
Well, and Blake, the other thing is, do you remember the young Chris Tanev? like I've been in a lot of NHL dressing rooms, and I can't think of a guy who looked less the part than a young Chris Tanev.
Oh, yeah.
He walked in, he looked like a grade 12 student,
111 pounds.
soaking wet, hula hooping a Cheerio.
Yeah. And yet was out there in the National Hockey League.
The muffin shot. You remember the shot?
Yeah. No, it was weird. But the problem is he plays a game. Not only now is he more fragile, but he plays a game that puts himself in the line of fire so much.
Routinely.
So I think actually calling him fragile is actually unfair. He just puts himself in the line of fire so much. It's just a law of averages at this point. He will get injured because of how he plays, not that he's brittle.
Professional puck eater.
Oh,
and
Grady,
hit taker.
Grady, you remember this too. Like he used to be the bug against the windshield.
Yeah, all the time. Like a lot of guys make that first pass on the inboards and sidestep the final check.
No,
he's okay taking it. He just makes the pass. He goes, I'm getting stapled.
The F1s.
He was kind of like the boxer that would just walk through punches. Like he'll take 6 or 7 to land one.
Who's Mickey Ward versus Arturo Gatti?
Yeah.
The two of them.
He is
no defense.
He is the embodiment of a Ward Gotti fight.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. Or Hagler Hearns, the famous one. And yet, even though I wouldn't sign him to a term deal, I'd love to see him back with the Vancouver Canucks. Pro
for the next 2 years is exactly what they need.
Like when you look up the definition of low maintenance player outside of the training staff, of course, Chris Tanev is your guy.
Yeah.
Mentor, leader. People listen when he speaks because, again, he doesn't speak all that much. Right. And is a walking, talking example of sacrificing for the greater good.
By the way, how many people do you think know what the Gumby reference is? How many of the young viewers
most people know Gumby still? No, Grady?
Grady, do you know who Gumby was?
No, I don't.
Now, really?
No.
It's amazing.
Probably, but not like I can't link his face to the name. But
green angular head. He's a rubber toy that you can bend into different positions. Gumby,
right.
Pokey, and Gumby and Pokey.
Yeah. See, I look it up and I know it.
You know what to look at. Yeah.
There was a movie in 1995.
Was there really?
Yeah. He debuted in 1953.
Yeah.
Wait a second. Is it a he? I don't know.
Don't assume.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm not sure of his I'm not sure of their pronouns.
Yes.
Careful now.
The Wikipedia page calls him an American cultural icon. Anyways. 1953. So that's a 71-year-old figure.
Yeah.
Imagine a Susie Tanev second pair, like
a
shutdown deep pairing.
Yeah, that's good shutdownness, but
for sure. For sure.
I don't see it happening.
No, me neither.
Yeah. And I got people screaming on me on Twitter like, Sekeres, what is your problem? You don't want Guentzel? Like, what do you have against greatness? This is not the droid we're looking for. We're looking for the winger for Pettersson. No. I fully agree. A winger for Pettersson is required. I'm just more comfortable shopping from a different aisle than Jake Guentzel, which brings us to our top story. And that is the Guentzel sweepstakes, and the contenders are starting to let themselves be known. David Pagnotta of the Fourth Period today reporting he expects the Los Angeles Kings to aggressively pursue Jake Guentzel. Of course, the Kings opened up some cap space in that deal last week where they shipped out Pierre-Luc Dubois and brought Darcy Kemper into the crease. The Detroit Red Wings, Pagnotta also names as a team that he believes will be in on Jake Guentzel. And of course, that would help explain why Detroit gave away with a second round
paid Jake Walman to leave.
$3.7 million Jake Walman over the next couple of years, a defenseman who was coming off a 12-goal season. Irfaan Gaffar, and we'll have Irf on the show later, has consistently said he just does not believe Jake Guentzel is going to sign with the Canadian team. That report, his report, was refuted, I think, is the agents going to work there saying, no, we want Vancouver to drive up the price here. I've long said I think Vancouver is a stalking horse for Guentzel. that the Guentzel camp looks at it and goes, great, have Rutherford and Alvin bid up some of these American teams, and that on July 1st, he's going to wind up being a King or a Red Wing or somewhere.
Do you think he gets to double digits? Is there a chance he gets 10 million?
No, I don't think so. But I can see 9.5.
Yeah, I can see 9.5 for sure. But at that point, it's just ceremonial. My goodness, if you're going to 9.5, somebody can get you to 10.
What about a higher?
It depends
higher
on
tax?
how. It depends on how. It depends on how close you're cutting it to the cap.
Higher tax states, say California, the LA Kings have to get.
They may be less.
10 million.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. That could compete again. Again, if you surround yourself with the appropriate accountants and tax lawyers, I'm sure you can find ways to make yourself whole, so to speak, in a jurisdiction that does have income tax, like our province. Well, like virtually, most of the jurisdictions in the National Hockey League outside of Texas, Florida, Tennessee. It's coming to Washington too. I believe Seattle's going to have this advantage.
Do you know 9 of the last 20 Stanley Cup champions are in the Sun Belt?
Mm-hmm.
Which leads me to believe, and a couple of these tax havens are in the Sun Belt.
Yep.
Well, look at the Florida streak right now.
But I truly believe, I was thinking we should do a poll question on this.
Ooh.
What's the biggest motivator for somebody to sign? And you're going to laugh at this, but I honestly think most of these guys are going to be filthy rich no matter where they play.
Right.
Their ability to go home and swim in a pool, to golf 12 months of the year, and to show up to practice in flip-flops.
Yep.
I think that is as big a
Golf
motivator
carts.
to sign with a certain club
For sure.
over another club. How many guys want to shiver after growing up in Canada? How many of them want to shiver to practice in Minnesota? I honestly, I think wearing short sleeves and shorts is as big an advantage as the tax bracket.
Yep.
Is as big. I really do. These are Canadian guys growing up in the prairies, growing up in rural Ontario. They're going to be making millions wherever they go. So what's the tiebreaker? Am I going to be toasty?
Yep.
Honestly, I think that's it. So if it's a battle, the Canucks are in on it, but so are blah, 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 and they're below the Mason-Dixon line, don't like the chances.
Now, I mean, the flip side is, I've heard this from players, agents before, and maybe it changes now in South Florida, but you play in Florida, you play in Arizona, you play in some of these other markets, Carolina, you're treated like a minor league baseball player. Oh,
Sure.
yeah. Oh, the hockey. Yeah, I've heard of the hockey team. Yeah. Where do you guys play out of? Oh, you play out of the big arena? Oh, okay. All right. So there are some who want to go to a place where the sport lives and breathes. And of course, that's Canada, that's Minnesota, that's Detroit, that's Philly, that's
the guys like Barkov and Bobrovsky and even Philip Roenick here. They don't care. Just want to play the game. They want to go home. They don't care.
Yep. And a lot of hockey players like the anonymity.
Yep.
It's not a tall poppy sport.
I would love to see that breakdown, though. Winning, fit, price.
Oh, that's a huge one.
Lifestyle.
Honestly, and you talk to managers, or agents. A big one is coach and fit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Who's your coach and where is he going to play me and what kind of style does he play?
Role.
Right. So I
think it's very individual.
I'm not sure there's a great
it wouldn't be unanimous.
example here from this year's Patrick Kane, for example. Maybe he is a great example. And look, 36 years old and his best days are, but if Patrick Kane is evaluating, okay, do I want to go play for, say, someone like John Cooper in Tampa, or do I want to go to play for Tocchet, who's going to ask me to eat pucks?
Yeah.
And wall work and non-negotiables, right?
Well, your past experiences guide all your future choices, right? So a guy that's got cups already, that's had that success, played in a big city already. He's already had a really fun experience. He's going to make different choices than a guy who's been playing in a small market in the U.S. with no success. Right?
Anyways,
It's all different.
I remain very skeptical. I would be delighted to be surprised here because I think it would be a fun story, and I'd love to see Guentzel play alongside Pettersson. But I just don't see it happening.
Yeah.
I would be quite surprised if July 1st comes around.
I'm prepared to be very surprised, but in a good way. And I mean that on Guentzel or somebody else. Like they aren't going to let this next 9-day period, I'll say, so a couple days into free. Like there's no way that the Vancouver Canucks are not making an acquisition of consequence.
Yes, but and we talked about this on the golf course yesterday with Jay Pat and Jason Ruff. Just do me a favor and don't do the Louis Eriksson plan. And by the Louis Eriksson plan, I don't mean sign a guy who turns out to be a horrible player like Louis Eriksson. What I mean is that summer, and I can remember making the call to Jim Benning and him just sounding like his dog had just died. Matt, Luch isn't coming home. He's signing at Edmonton. Their whole thing was, let's sign Milan Lucic. Bring him home. And when he got seduced by Edmonton with the opportunity to play on Connor McDavid's wing, you remember that summer, they signed like 6 wingers. They were all going to play with Connor McDavid. The Canucks immediately went and overpaid for the next best available winger, in their view, Louis Eriksson.
Mm-hmm.
I have said this next tier of wingers is interesting to me. You've talked about Marchessault on a shorter term deal because he's 34. I've looked at it and went, boy, guys like DeBrusk, Toffoli, Teravainen, Arvidsson, Tyler Bertuzzi, there's some others too.
Well, Teravainen is a different metric because he's a trade, not a...
No, he's a UFA.
Teravainen is?
You're thinking Natchez.
Oh, maybe we're thinking Nation.
Yeah. They're all attractive, but don't go out and sign one of those guys to $7.5-8 million because you missed out on Guentzel.
Mm-hmm.
And the agents are putting the screws to you, driving the price up because they know, oh yeah, this team was in on Guentzel, didn't make it, but they've got money now.
Yeah.
Don't talk yourself in to huge money for the next guy down just to go out and say, oh yeah, we got our winger. You still need to stick to your plan and find guys that fit. And in the Canucks case, yeah, you'd prefer if he had speed because Alvin has specifically mentioned speed. Yeah, of course, he's got to be somewhat of a goal scorer because you're going to play him with Elias Pettersson. You'd really like if he's a all situations winger, or at the very least, like Guentzel, good enough defensively, you can have him out late protecting leads. He's a penalty killer, even better. Stick to your plan. And look, I think this management group, based on what they did last year, Blake, is going to do that and deserves the benefit of the doubt on the way in. Because last year was a home run of a free agency season for the Vancouver Canucks, even though none of the individual signings really moved the needle much in terms of excitement in the marketplace with the fans.
It's too broad to look at trades, but in terms of actual free agent signings, I could see them paying too much for Guentzel. I could see them paying too much for a right shot D like a Pesce or a Montour. But I think that's the short list. Like, I don't think they're going to get caught overpaying that middle class. And I think a great example of this is, and we got told this by a zillion insiders.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Philip Hronek's got all the leverage. Oh, it's going to begin with an 8, so he's got all the leverage.
Well, he did have substantial leverage.
He had leverage for a raise, yes. But,
well, he had leverage for an 8-year deal, as it turned out.
But the cap hit is not extravagant.
No.
Like, it's completely fair cap hit.
Yeah.
Given where the player is, given the economics and the salary cap bump and all that sort of stuff. So I think we saw some, like, they didn't get taken out by that contract. And given the threat of losing a right shot defenseman that was being campaigned for by their MVP in Quinn Hughes, like I think there was a real fear there that they would just feel cornered.
Mm-hmm.
They came out of it looking pretty good. So if they're not paying through the nose for that one, I think they're going to have restraint for everybody but the tip of the top of the
moving right along, the 2024 Hockey Hall of Fame class was announced on Tuesday. Pavel Datsyuk, who we all thought would be a first Hall of Famer, sure enough.
Mm-hmm.
Sikamus's Shea Weber, in his first opportunity, gets the call to
very
the
polarizing decision,
right.
as it turns out.
I wanted to circle back on this one, Blake, because we talked about him earlier in the week or last week, whenever it was. And frankly, the more I looked at Weber's case, the more I was on board with this decision yesterday as a first ballot guy. Now, some will say, didn't win a cup, never won a Norris. Fair enough. What did he win? Well, virtually everything else you can win in the sport. A Memorial Cup, a World Junior, a World Championships, Olympic gold medals. Twice a first-team All-Star, League All-Star, so twice one of the two best defensemen in the league. Twice a second-team NHL All-Star, so twice amongst the best four defensemen in the game. 3 times a Norris finalist.
And that
and 8 times in the top 8 of Norris voting.
Right.
But then you mentioned something to me yesterday. You said, do you know that Weber finished with 224 career goals? And we thought about it and went, that's like a defenseman averaging 22 goals a year for 10 seasons. And then here's the other thing, Blake. Weber played about the equivalent. It shows 16 years on the hockey card. But because of all the games missed, it's closer to 12 and a half, 13 years.
Yeah.
That's an exceptional career.
It is.
So I'm willing to look past no cup, no Norris win for this player, given the rest, because here's the other thing. It's not like he gave any quarters defensively, right? You're talking about a superior defender at one point who was also one of the most offensively inclined and goal-scoring inclined defensemen.
From 2008 to 2014, here's his Norris Trophy: 4th, 7th, 2nd, 8th, 3rd, 4th.
Right.
Like, I'm sorry, like
that's a 7-year run near the tip top,
with
of
5 of those 7 years being in the top 4 defensemen,
right,
in the entire league.
Yeah,
the consistency.
So I think I sold him a little bit short when we were discussing these candidates earlier in the week.
The other polarizing one is Jeremy Roenick.
Well, Roenick is very polarizing.
And he's polarizing, I think, for a lot of people right off the get-go because of his personality.
Which really shouldn't.
Both during hockey and post-hockey, and that should play into the role. But here's the thing, statistically speaking, he's there. And we know also, I think there is a bias towards American players in the Hall. They love to try to catch up the Americans to the Canadians. But ultimately, his stats speak for themselves. You know what? His stats would be even more overwhelming if he didn't peter out and hang on for so long. His last 4 years, he played a lot of games.
Yeah.
And he had almost no points in his last 4 years. If he calls it quits appropriately at the end of the 2004 season, after having played still 15 years in the league,
yeah,
he is above a point per game. He's above a point per game now, but he would have been a point per game if he had called it quits then and not hung on so long. So he is Italian. He's got the gold medal too in a World Cup, and you know, like
I was less bullish on Roenick's candidacy. In fact, there's a part of me that believes that Roenick got in because the Hockey Hall of Fame selection committee is tired of hearing the whining and complaining about when are you going to put these American forwards in. Roenick, Tkachuk.
He's a 500 goal scorer with 1,200 points. That's going to get you in.
Okay. This from Scott Wheeler of The Athletic, who they did like a shadow selection committee. Roenick never won a cup, never won an NHL award, was never a first or second team league all-star. his best scoring season, tied for 6th.
Yeah, that's, I mean,
you know, as we know, the Hockey Hall of Fame is a big hall. It's not a small hall. Baseball for years and years was a small hall. It's gotten a little more liberal. They've let more people in the Baseball Hall of Fame. Hockey has always been a big tent, come one, come all, hall the very good. I think that's where Rona qualifies. And frankly, Blake, I found myself mightily disappointed for Alex McGillney because I think this year was his best opportunity when you take a look at the other candidates this year. Next year, ladies and gentlemen, Zdeno Chara, Joe Thornton, Carey Price, Penticton's Duncan Keith. Like, they're all going in first ballot, right?
I'd have to pour over Keith a little bit more, but probably, yeah. Cup winner, gold medals, yeah.
3-time
Yeah.
Cup winner.
I mean, I've never felt like he, like, for instance, I think Shea Weber was a far more imposing singular player.
3-time Cup winner, 2-time Norris winner.
Did he get 2 Norrises? Really?
Member of the NHL.
He got 2 Norrises?
All-time 100-year anniversary team.
Yeah.
2-time first team All-Star.
He got 2 Norrises.
2 Anacon Smythe, Mike.
Yeah,
like Duncan Keith is in.
Yeah,
there ain't no question. Carey Price. Anybody going to hold the reasonably, roughly shorter career against him?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Chara, Cup, Norris,
he's in. Yeah,
7-time All-Star.
Yeah,
played 1,680 games too, and a little bit of Marlowe is involved there too. Zdeno Chara, a 7-time member of either first or second All-Star team, and then of course Carey Price is the rare goaltender, or at least rarer in the modern era, with a Hart Trophy, right? He's got a Vezina, he's got a Hart, he's got a Masterton, he's got a
gold medal
Jennings.
hardware.
Yeah, he's got gold medals as well.
I'm surprised that Duncan
Pearson
Keith
as well.
won.
Only once a first team All-Star for Carey Price, though.
Duncan Keith won in 9, 10, and 13. I'm just going back to Keith. Like, he wasn't a point getting defenseman.
No, he wasn't
Like,
the biggest point getter. No.
You know, didn't score goals.
Nope.
But didn't have like the Shea Weber had 2.5 times his goal scoring. Like, like it's amazing that they respected him enough to give him the Norris Trophy.
And Joe Thornton, can we agree that Thornton's going in and quickly?
Yeah, very good. Yeah.
So, you know, you take a look at that. Those are 4 guys that are.
They can't wait to get Chara and Thornton in there just for the speeches, I think. Certainly Thornton. It'll be a fun party.
Well, and if presuming they both do go in next year together, what a juxtaposition that'll be for the Boston Bruins, huh?
Yeah.
It's the one guy who got away. Every 10 years, we get stupid and trade a number 1 centerman like Joe Thornton or Tyler Seguin.
Every once in a while, we fleece somebody.
Yeah. Well, you know, good thing we signed that Chara guy in free agency, because otherwise we'd still be talking about Joe Thornton and the bad trade that they made with the San Jose Sharks there. So, yeah, I just think it gets tougher for McGillney next year. I thought this was the year that you look at it and went, because, you know, look at the guys who were left off here. Zetterberg. Some people thought Curtis Joseph might have a better chance this time around. I know some of the metropolitan area are big on Patrick Eliash. So Larry Brooks tweeting about that today. So, yeah, the player category. And learn this today. There's a player category and there's a female player category at the Hockey Hall of Fame. Not very 2024 of the Hall.
Just in terms of the labeling.
Well, yeah, like player category.
Yeah. Well, they have to.
Well, because I saw Saravelli tweet out, here are the inductees, player category, female player. And people are like, Frank, what are you doing? The females are players too. You know, why is it male player a female player? And Frank had to explain, like, no, those are the actual categories that they induct people in. Player, female player.
Yeah.
You can really just drop the female and put player.
The labels are tricky, though.
Well,
they have to have the two separate streams because they're trying to catch up the women's category because of years of neglect. And so they want to carve out two for sure.
And Jennifer Botterill is now becoming the Alex McGillney in the female player category. People are like,
well, the other thing they're trying to do is catch up on the U.S. women's side.
That was quite evident because Blake and I have both covered women's hockey,
multiple women's world hockey championships.
And, you know, the two players inducted, yes, okay.
You'll have to I'll take their word for it because I don't know the two players.
I don't specifically remember them being that great, but hey.
I saw one of the spurned female players is Megan Duggan. I know Megan Duggan.
Yeah.
I don't know these two players.
Well, I mean, we're more inclined to know the Canadian players, to be fair. But yes.
No, Megan Duggan's an American. Isn't she? Megan Duggan's an American player. And I know her. You're thinking of Megan Mickelson, maybe.
I might be.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, Duggan's American.
Right. My bad. And then we get to the builder category. Where this selection committee just exposes itself. The naked cronyism of Colin Campbell getting in because he's a longtime Gary Bettman NHL head office lieutenant. Wasn't a particularly outstanding player or coach. Presided over a department of discipline way back when that nobody could wrap their head around. And quite frankly, set the sport back in terms of its steadfastness against punishing headshots for years. Like, how many players' brains are scrambled eggs because of what Colin Campbell in the league didn't do way back when? And he's in the Hall of Fame.
I'll put it this way, Matt. Like, you can say what you want about Gary Bettman, and there's a lot of reason for criticism for Gary Bettman. But Gary Bettman going to the Hockey Hall of Fame, I get, because longevity. The owners have wanted him to be their leader for this long. That means something. He brought in the salary cap system that, like it or lump it, has worked for this league. It has worked for the league. That I get. Name the thing that Colin Campbell has done.
Exactly.
That you can even devil's advocate. Well, that did do this. Because you can do that with Gary Bettman on a lot of decisions. You can at least get devil's advocate arguments for Gary Bettman positions. Name the thing that Colin Campbell has done as a builder.
Did you see the 2-page statement from Gary on behalf of Colin Campbell?
He gave 2 pages just to justify it?
Yeah.
When you have to do that.
An accomplished junior player, rugged defenseman, relentless dedication.
None of his
coached the Rangers, guided them to playoff upsets, got to an Eastern Conference final.
Not relevant.
He was at the center of the summit with the players that opened the game up in 2005. Gary credits him with that, or being a part of that.
Good brainstorming input.
Central to the crafting of every rule change, no matter how late and overdue. My words, not theirs. And technological innovation. Most notably, modernizing and centralizing video review for in-game rulings and supplementary discipline.
A technology that remains controversial to this day with its accuracy and its focus.
Gary gives him credit for watching more than 30,000 NHL games and personally making thousands of critical video review calls.
So he was doing his job.
Yeah.
The statement ends, I consider myself fortunate to have had Colin by my side over the last 26 years, and I'm proud to call him one of my closest friends. That's right there. The penultimate sentence.
You said it out loud.
He's one of the closest friends of the commissioner, so let's put him in.
And the other builder, by the way, is David Poyle,
who has been the GM for more games than anybody in history.
And did a lot with a little.
In Nashville for many years.
In his organization.
Exactly. Didn't win a cup, got to a cup final, but boy, did the Nashville Predators punch above their weight class. And people forget this at one point, but with absolute circus going on at the ownership level there.
And self-imposed salary caps.
Right.
That were way below where everybody else was spending.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, there was a time they were out trolling for anybody to own the Nashville Predators, anybody but Jim Balsley.
Yeah.
Boots Del Baggio.
Builder ones will always be sort of debatable, but I'm fine with Poyle. I got no problem with that.
Well, I put it out on Twitter yesterday. You can make the argument McGillney should almost go in as a builder, given defecting from Russia.
Right.
Being a trailblazer.
I mean, it certainly should be a credit on his ledger in the player category.
Never mind the player and what he did as in the league.
Crafty
off merit on alone.
Oh, and incidentally, Colin Campbell was part of the Hall of Fame selection committee for 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
Like, honestly.
Is that not a conflict of
naked
interest?
cronyism.
Don't worry, we'll get you in one of these days.
We'll get you in.
Just vote this guy.
Can you imagine the meeting goes around? Lanny, who's up next? Colin Campbell. Oh, Coley. What a great guy.
Hey, Coley. Everybody pounds the table.
Coley.
Yeah, Coley.
You sat right there.
Let's put him in.
Gary will love that.
No one will even notice it on the press release.
We'll get praise from the commissioner for doing that. I liked Wyshynski on this. Colin Campbell had a huge influence on the NHL. Moving on.
Yeah, that the words you read are just sort of very vague.
Let's remember, in any other ethical, reputable business organization, Colin Campbell would have been fired years ago for bullying and intimidating those in his charge about calls and non-calls against his son and his son's team. The venting hockey dad who explained, I didn't think anybody would read those emails. Well,
his son's team that just won a Stanley Cup.
There you go. It's been a big week for the Campbell family.
I'm sure Aaron Rome is really happy for Colin Campbell.
Aaron Rome is somewhere on a Manitoba farm with a big tool, digging it into something and still gritting his teeth about the suspension.
Well, remember we had him on one of those Christmas episodes.
Yeah,
right.
Still got emotional.
Yeah, he was shaking up. Well,
he's okay. 16.3 million people across North America viewed Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final. It's the second most watched NHL game on record since 2004 when you combine Canadian and U.S. television viewership.
Which is what we should do in these instances. Like, who really cares who's watching it in one particular country? What is the league audience thinking of it? And that's pretty good.
Game 7 outdrew any baseball or basketball finals game over the last 5 years. Now, a lot of people have rightfully said there haven't been a ton of great series in baseball or basketball recently.
It really did that?
Yes.
In North America or in the States?
I believe that's the North American audience,
which is still interesting though.
Yeah.
It outdrew,
like you don't get there without Canada. Bottom line is
it outdrew any singular World Series game or NBA
Finals game over the last 5 years.
Yeah, no,
that's still very, very good. It's the most watched Stanley Cup Final series since 2013. Again, across North America, averaging 8.8 million. And that's way up. And this was the most watched playoffs across North America since 2017. And the second most watched playoffs in the U.S. ever.
Yeah, I mean, I've said it already. A lot of anecdotal evidence on my behalf that people were interested in these playoffs.
Right. And of course, be aware of your own prism. We were very invested in these playoffs for 2 rounds when the Canucks were around, right?
Yeah.
I think it very much helped that the New York Rangers went to the Eastern Conference Final, right? That is a huge market.
The irony about all this is we all felt the first round, which is usually the one we all agree is the very best round.
No, exactly.
Was the weakest we could remember in years.
Exactly. It was kind of the Stanley Cup playoffs in inverse, because like the games in the conference final and the final,
Pretty good.
I thought were better.
Yeah.
And you know, Edmonton notwithstanding, and with teams that really, when I would put them against other teams from other years in the Final Four, probably weren't as aesthetically pleasing.
Well, even
like Florida and the Rangers play very good hard-nosed hockey, and you know, they played some great games there with pace and all of that. But it's not like you're looking up and down those teams and going, oh, they just play beautiful skating, high-scoring offensive hockey. No, not really.
Well, even Canucks,
for example,
Canucks and Predators, the first 50
Mhm.
minutes of every game was not great. Fabulous finishes in that series.
Yeah.
But
Like when I think back the last few years, the Tampa teams, the Colorado teams, they were just a pleasure to watch. Beautiful hockey, the way they move the puck around and everything.
yeah,
I don't think the Floridas and the Dallases and the Rangers this year were quite as aesthetically pleasing.
Dallas is
but
pretty. Dallas, is
yeah,
improved.
no, fair enough. Fair enough. How about this too, Blake? And this again from an NHL press release. NHL record 89% of the playoff games were decided by one goal or multiple goals following an empty netter. 78 of the 88 games were either one goal or featured empty netters, which got it to a multi-goal.
Which is great. They can't help but be a little cynical there and just wonder how much game management is part of that. But it makes for a dramatic TV show, which is the bottom line.
And then 45%, nearly half of all the games, were comeback wins, the third highest rate over the past 30 years.
Well, I think that is abundantly clear. Like, I don't think any team down 2 goals going into the third period in the playoffs felt like they were out of that game. And I don't think fans think that their team is out of the game. If you're down 3-1 going to the third, we remember what the dead puck era was like. That you weren't winning that hockey game. 3-1 going to the third. I think you have a chance.
Yep,
you absolutely have a chance.
Yep. John Cooper, the lawyer from Prince George, is going to coach Canada at the Four Nations in the Olympics. We knew that, but that's formalized now. Congratulations to Coach Coop. I think he's best in class amongst the Canadian head coaches. Now, certainly the resume is extraordinary for John Cooper. And did you see this story about the Canucks revoking the accounts of season ticket holders because they say they're reselling their seats? City News had the story. The Canucks said in a statement to City News, our goal with season ticket memberships is to create a sense of community and allow fans to attend as many games as possible. Restricting ticket brokers from purchasing memberships and tickets will help create the best possible experience for our fans and protect the integrity of our season ticket members. City News, I see Rob Williams. We'll talk to Rob about this tomorrow. Have found fans that said, I don't know what I did wrong. Like, yeah, I went to 10 of the 40 or I went to 20 of the 40 and I sold some of them privately. I sold some of them via Ticketmaster, that there weren't crazy markups. So there are some people out there left wondering as to why they have been flagged.
Yeah, they better
be
be pretty darn sure that this isn't a guy that just couldn't go to a third of his games. Like, that should be allowed.
Right. So this is kind of a slippery slope on both sides of the equation. Particularly if this is going to go forward, I think the Canucks have to be very, very clear with these season ticket members in terms of what's the threshold, what's too much.
Yeah, exactly. And can you trace it to, any level of nefariousness?
Right.
Because you should at least get a warning first of, hey, we've noticed you've sold, 60% of your tickets.
Right.
We don't allow that. Please refrain from that going forward. Buy a smaller ice pack. Something
exactly. There should be fixes here with these individual accounts that can make things right, because the spirit of it you do like from Canucks Sports Entertainment. Oh, we don't want to just have ticket brokers or the agents of ticket brokers buy up all these season tickets. And then the next thing you know, the markup, because I think we are going back into that era, Blake, right? Where it's going to be a hot ticket, Rogers Arena and the Canucks next year. It certainly was this year for the first time in many, many years.
And maybe that's why they're acting.
So I appreciate and support the spirit of this. with the Canucks and Canucks Sports and Entertainment. But the mechanics of getting it right over thousands of season ticket membership accounts could be tricky.
Yeah, we'll see the investigation internally for the Canucks. How diligent is that? I don't know. I'd be intrigued.
All right, moving right along here to our menu. Are we doing menu, or you wanted to do a draft thing, Grady?
Oh, he's talking about the
Oh no, just the daily
face-off challenge. To remember, you can do the NHL draft challenge leading up to the draft.
Oh, this is fun. I love me some drafts.
10 questions.
Well, I'm assigned.
See how good you can do.
Is that it's just a one-time shot?
Yeah, we'll unveil our picks on Thursday.
Want to join the Daily Face-Off 8 a.m. Canada Day Monday for their free agent show. Okay, menu brought to you by Greta. Great spot to catch game throughout the season. Quick walk, rink, stadium, go-to spot for food, drink, and the arcade. It is an incredible arcade. Fun before and after the game, during the game. Make it a game night at Greta, 50 West Cordova or gretabar.com. Irfaan Gaffar is going to join us here from Rinkwide. Updates on a bunch of the Canucks Indigenous first free agents, plus players out there on the market. Frankie Corrado is going to join us as well after working Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final on Monday in Florida, rubbing elbows with Roberto Luongo and the champion Florida Panthers. We talk free agency with Frank as well on guys like Zadorov, Tanev.
He's got a new nickname for you.
Others. Well, they both do.
Yeah,
Brady.
yeah.
They both.
It was right there. It was right there.
And here's the photo.
Very on the nose.
Yes.
Grady, bless you. I did not call for that. Look at how excited Bruff looks for me there, huh? But the unbridled enthusiasm he has for the achievement of others is truly one of his great personality traits.
It was a melancholic moment for a lot of us that don't have aces.
Beat you to the hole in one.
Yeah. Yeah. And we
can you believe that? Bruff's a really good golfer. Patterson's a really good golfer.
Neither of them have them?
No.
It's a lot. It's a lot of golf. That's the first one I've ever even witnessed. Never mind getting one myself.
Really?
Yeah.
That surprised me because you've played a lot of golf and with good players.
Yeah.
And I am not a good player.
I'm maybe this says something about my iron play, but I have no indelible memories of like me being close.
Really?
Like I don't have I remember that time it hung out. I have no idea. No.
Well, frankly, this should be a second. Pool noodle cost me at 16 Northlands. You remember that? A couple weeks into the pandemic?
Yeah.
Ground screw goes, that ball was in and bounced off the pool noodle out.
Should have gave it to you.
No.
Poor
Brady, we had that discussion. You can't give hole in ones. No.
It's either in or it's out.
It's in or it's out.
Yeah.
You take the bad break of the pool noodle. So Northlands owed me one. And the it will.
But if there was ever a time for an outlier, that was a weird time in history. There was an object in the way. Wow. I think you could make a
but ball skip through through the hole anyway. So, but I should say,
weird time in history was that ball going in yesterday. That was very weird. I couldn't process it for a moment.
Matt's final words before he swung the club.
Right.
If you didn't see this on Twitter, I don't feel comfortable. I don't like the tee box. So back
here's
here.
why.
I can't see the
I've
hole.
never seen the markers, the tee markers that far back on the middle deck. So I actually had a club selection choice, which, what club I'm hitting at Northlands, really from every inch of the property to every flag. But this one was so irregular that I actually had to think, what am I going to hit here? So I was happy to let you and Bruff go first. And then Patterson gets over the ball and says, these tees are so far back and I'm so short, I can barely see over the reeds and down to the green. And so then I get over the ball and I go, you're right, Jeff. In all the rounds we played here in Northland, it's like 200-300 rounds. I don't know how many it's been. I can't ever remember having this view to the eighth green. Wow. I felt a little off kilter.
Well, you persevered. It's true.
I sure did.
It's a measure of bravery we've seldom seen.
Anyways, thank you for everybody who reached out on the hole in one. Okay. Bet365 bets of the day. And Bet365, a proud partner of Sekeres Price. And we are absolutely delighted to have them aboard. BC Lions schedule has asked them to play in the 4 opening successive weeks: Sunday, Saturday, Friday, Thursday. That's 4 straight short weeks. That means fewer practices at a time of year when you really want practices because you're bringing new American players up to speed on the rules and on the scheme and everything. And then there's Vernon Adams, who missed Wednesday's practice session nursing an abdominal issue. He's going to play. Vladek isn't going to play. Edmonton, they're coming off a short week too, but you're getting a touchdown and a hook with them. So I'm going to keep taking points early in the season here. Elks plus 7.5. I expect a close game.
I'm going to go to, and we're going to talk in the final segment about Canada's win over Peru, historic victory, but not a great looking victory per se. Get the goal while they're up a man after the first of what should have been 2 red cards. So I don't have a ton of confidence going into their match on Saturday versus Chile. The opening line for a draw plus 230. That's the most optimistic I can get versus Chile. And that will put them in.
You're normally Mr. Rainbow and Sunshine on this team.
And a draw puts them in a very precarious position. Peru's taking on effectively the Argentinian second team because they're resting everybody versus Peru. Plus 230, Canada, the draw over Chile.
Open an account with Bet365 today. Bet on a huge range of markets.
I said over Chile, with Chile. Although that would effectively be like a win if the draw gets them through. So with Chile.
Thanks for clarifying.
Open an account with Bet365 today. Bet on a huge range of markets. So whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Use code VANBONUS when opening that account. Irfaan Gaffar, some Canucks talk next.
In a season like this, you never want to miss a single second of what's happening on the ice, and you want to be around your fellow fans, right? Well, Greta Bar YVR at 50 West Cordova, the perfect spot to do so. Hey, if you've got tickets, a great place to pre and post. They've got drink specials every single day. And if you don't have tickets, well, stick around and soak up the atmosphere with all your fellow fans, play all the great video games and air hockey, great air hockey setup as well at Greta Bar YVR. We'll see you there, 50 West Cordova. The Vancouver Canadians are back at the net. Catch fireworks, giveaways, and Friday nooners all spring and summer long. Get your tickets at CanadiansBaseball.com.
Our next guest is brought to you by the Arnold Palmer Design Whistler Golf Club. Off to an incredible start here in 2024. Amazing reviews on the course conditions and service, and reminding group organizers of 12 or more, it is not too early to get your September or October corporate or buddy trips booked. Prime times are filling up fast here. You, the group organizer, if you bring 12 or more, you play for free. Tell us about your group at whistlergolf.com/groups. Joining us now from Rinkwide Vancouver, and he and Jeff Patterson recorded a new episode here today. So be on the lookout for that. It's Mr. Irfaan Gaffar. How are you?
Gentlemen, Blake, how you doing? Matt, I'm going to have to start calling you Ace.
You're not the only one.
No.
Not the only one.
How is that? I'm jealous. What does it feel like? What does that moment feel like when you hit the ball? You know you hit it and it just rolls right in.
So the logical part of your brain is like, the ball disappeared. That's a hole in one. The conditioned part of your brain is looking for every reason why that couldn't possibly be so. I looked at Blake and I'm, are you sure? Yeah. There's something glimmering beside the hole? No. Is it behind the flag? No. Went in. Then you just sort of go through like, I don't know, it was like a fog came over me.
Yeah, the next hole is not good.
A haze. No, I was trembling. Like I was happy just to hit the ball, make contact with the ball on the next hole. Thank you, Irf. Appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm nowhere close to a hole in one, but good for you.
Mm-hmm. A lot of names that we want to throw at you here, Irf. You tell us what you're hearing, what you think the likelihood that the Canucks are going to be able to land them. Let's start with big Nikita Zadorov. What says you? What's going on there?
As we inch closer and closer to the draft, a couple days away, free agency on July 1st. I mean, we haven't heard anything yet. The last we heard is maybe the Zadorov camp has come down a little bit in their ask, but Zadorov, if he does hit free agency, is going to get what he wants from somewhere. all signs kind of point it's trending in that direction. I mean, unless the Canucks can pick up the phone and decide that they want to match what they want, or Zadorov really decides that, you know, his value and what he thinks here is best for his family, he's going to end up staying. But if I'm him, you're at that age, you know, you're going to go and get your money somewhere. Why not go and get it? So that's one that I haven't fully closed the door on, but it's as we inch closer here to the draft on Friday, guys, it's one that is definitely closing pretty fast.
Do you know what teams would be involved there, Irf?
I mean, you just look at it by base of teams that have a lot of money that would probably, you know, want to go and look at it, like the Toronto Maple Leafs, right? You know, with the tree living kind of connection there. The Detroit Red Wings, they have all sorts of money now. The Utah hockey team's got all sorts of money. The Boston Bruins are a team that have all sorts of money that'll be looking to improve. And, you know, Zadorov kind of fits that mold of a Bruins type of hockey player, that big physical defenseman that, you know, can score sometimes, but he'll fight for his teammates. And, you know, the Toronto, you know how they love their media darlings, and Zadorov has definitely been that here in these parts.
The Canucks have done a good job of sealing up news generally. Yep. Things have kind of plopped out of nowhere. Pettersson and Roenick in particular, while there had been reporting, it was quiet before both of those signings ultimately get released. So I wonder if it really means anything, but we aren't hearing anything about any of the incumbents. Like, we're just assuming Lindholm's gone, and Joshua. I would have thought if Joshua was coming back, that was the easiest signing to make if he was coming back. And the fact that we haven't seen that one leads me to be rather pessimistic.
Yeah, I think on Joshua, because it's been so quiet for so long and no one's heard anything, whether the agent hasn't said anything or the Vancouver Canucks have, you know, you mentioned, done a pretty good job of keeping everything inside. It's all signs point towards him going to get his money. Now, whether, again, it's the Leafs, whether it's a team like the Chicago Blackhawks, the Colorado Avalanche that would be interested in his services. Like I've said before a million times, this is a guy that for the first time in his NHL career is going to see some real money thrown his way. So go and get your real money if you're Dakota Joshua. If the Canucks are offering you, if they did in fact, or there was anything of $2.5 to $3 million or whatever it was, and a team's giving you $4, you take the $4 all day if you're him. And I just think that that's completely fair. I'm all about guys going to get their bag. I agree with you, Blake. I think that, you know, with the Elias Lindholm story, I think for him, the offer, if it was in fact true, it's 7 times 7. You know, he's a guy that is going to get his money out there right now. If he gets a deal of north of 7.5 or starting at a 7.5 type of range, you know, in a different market, in a less tax place, that's a difference of $3-4 million bucks, right? And the grand scheme of things. So that's a lot of money for some of these guys. And I think that, you know, for his point of view, you know, fit is going to be a big thing for him. You know, I think that he definitely is going to want to be a center. I think that, you know, being a third line center here in Vancouver probably wasn't going to be the best fit for him. And we know Elias Pettersson's probably not going to play the wing. They're not going to move that up either as well. So it was fun while it lasted for Elias Lindholm, but I'm happy for him if he goes and gets out, if he goes and gets his money elsewhere.
Yeah, of course, as you mentioned, with the bigger role. Okay, so Lindholm, Joshua, Lafferty, we don't anticipate any of them will be back. We haven't spent a lot of time on Teddy Bluger, Irf, but I understand there might be some encouraging news there with regards to his retention by the Vancouver Canucks. What do you know?
I think they want to bring him back, right? And I think that Bluger might, you know, go out there and kind of test it a little bit, but I think that there's, you know, some indication from both sides that, you know, he wants to play here, that he wants to be here. And does he go back to that third line center role, the role that he was brought here for, right? Now that if Lindholm, in fact, obviously ends up testing free agency and signs elsewhere, is Bluger a guy that, you know, they're going to be able to get on that cheap value and go and spend your money elsewhere? So it's a guy who they know. It's a guy that has some experience in the National Hockey League, and it's a guy that's proven that's been able to play up and down that lineup. So that's an encouraging sign from both.
But I think he also proved this year, guys, he's a fourth line center. Like, you know, for 10 days can play as third line center. But I think his production and his inability to finish, I think that, you know, bring him back, sure. But that's a fourth line center.
For the penalty killing, bring him back.
Yeah, because if you lose Lindholm on PK, you're going to need a guy instantly that goes to your one. And Joshua, if you lose Lindholm and Joshua, all your penalty killers, you're going to have to go and find some new ones, whether that's from within or whether that's out there on the open market or via trade. You know, you're definitely going to have to go and improve that way.
All right, the big fish, Jake Guentzel. And Irf, you've been skeptical that this player is going to sign in Canada.
I've been skeptical since the beginning, to be completely honest. Look, I think that, there was people that said that, the report that was out there that Guentzel was never going to play in Canada was false. I think that was maybe his side trying to drive up the price a little bit. And I think that, having the Canucks maybe be interested in Jake Guentzel, maybe try to drive up his price a little more. He's a guy that's going to want $9 million a year. I mean, are the Vancouver Canucks going to pay north of $9 million a year? Because that's probably what you're going to have to do if you want to even have a shot at the table of talking to Jake Guentzel. So I understand the knowing the front office and knowing the coaching staff and the perfect fit for Elias Pettersson of what it could be, but I don't think it's going to get done. Carolina still has a few more days. If they want to make it work, they can definitely try. So north of $60 million is what he's going to get.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, is Carolina still involved there? Who would it be the other teams you think on Guentzel?
I think Carolina's definitely one. Chicago, that's another team, right? I think with Connor Bedard and what they have there and what they potentially could have, getting a guy with the experience that Jake Guentzel does have, and you're going to have to pay a premium for these type of players if you are them. But he's a guy that can definitely help both on the ice and off the ice. And, he's a point of game guy in the playoffs. So if Chicago's a team that's hoping to, inch closer and make the playoffs and, do a little bit of damage in the postseason the next couple of years, he's a perfect guy that you want to ride shotgun with Connor Bedard.
So what's plan B? If you're skeptical on Guentzel at this point, we've got Tyler Toffoli in our poll question as a possibility. Does that make sense? He will be cheaper. He is older. What do you think the interest is in Tyler Toffoli?
He wants term, right? You're not getting Tyler Toffoli on a 3-year deal. You're getting Tyler Toffoli on a 4 or a 5-year deal. If you're the Vancouver Canucks, I think that's plain and simple for a guy that's, north of 30 years old in the twilight of his career. He's going to go and try and maximize every opportunity to make as much money as he can. The Canucks are probably going to lowball him. Right, they're going to because of the experience that he's had playing here, and you're going to get the opportunity to play with Elias Pettersson. You know what, Tyler Toffoli's going to want to get paid. I know he's made a lot of money in his career, but when you're at this stage of your career, you've also played in a number of Canadian markets as well. So I wonder if that's any indication of him maybe kind of want to take his talents elsewhere. But if I'm them, I don't even really try. I just think that he's going to cost too much, to be completely honest. And then for a winger, a scoring winger, like if you go and look at it, and we sit here and we can go through a list of guys, Jake DeBrusk's name has always been linked to the Vancouver Canucks. How expensive is he going to be? Guy like Anthony Duclair, is that a guy that really excites people or gets you, out of your seat if they go and make that move? Probably not. So the Canucks are going to have to get creative. I think that there's an RFA.
Guys, the Manthas and Bertuzzi's. We brought those two names up as well.
Yeah, but even then, like Bertuzzi, okay, he's had some success. He played with Austin Matthews, and Elias Pettersson, yeah, he's got a top level talent, but he's a guy that's going to want money, right? It's like a lot of these guys are going to want to be paid a lot of money. And I think that for the Vancouver Canucks, they don't really have it. Like you lose Zadorov, you're going to have to spend money and find a defenseman. You lose Lindholm. Yeah, okay, you can probably find a third line center at cheap. You're going to lose Joshua. You're going to need to find someone there. And that's where another name, Matt, I know you're going to mention is Jordan Martinook that might come into play for the Vancouver Canucks as well. But like Mantha doesn't excite me that much. Tyler Bertuzzi really doesn't either all that much for the most part. Like I see you shaking your head there, Blake, because I think we can both agree, right? Like I think for them, it's an RFA. I think you target who you want. Yeah, you might not have assets in draft capital, but you've got some assets that are on your team if you are willing to part with to improve your hockey team, not just this year, but the foreseeable future. Would you be willing to give those up? And I think that's the question that we need to talk about.
Is that Höglander, Irf?
Yeah, to be completely honest, it is. I think that the way that, he's come about and had a great season, we all know that north of 20 goal scorers and how many of them were 5-on-5, no showed in the playoffs. Right. And I think that, there are teams around the National Hockey League that have had interest in him in the past. And if you're the Vancouver Canucks, on his next deal, he's going to want a little bit of more money. And if you can go and use him as an asset to try and improve and get a better player in return that you're willing to give that money to, that that will be, more serviceable and dependable than a guy like Nils Höglander was, you go and you try and make that move if you can.
We have long heard the name John Marino in this market, the right side defenseman, of course, a former Penguin there with the Rutherford Alvin group. He has matriculated to New Jersey, where he didn't have a great season there. And of course, they're getting Dougie Hamilton back. They're expected to be big players on Brett Pesce. So the conventional wisdom is that John Marino will shake free. What do you know there?
Yeah, I think it's definitely the case that he will shake free. It just depends on where he ends up. The natural choice would be you look at here and how he would just fit right into what the Canucks are trying to do, right? And I know that Patrick Alvin
great cap hit too. It's a great cap hit at 4.4.
Yeah, and I know that Patrick Alvin has name checked Cole McWard as a right shot defenseman that he wants to see more from, but you need to have that stopgap. You need to have a guy that's played in these meaningful games. You can't just hope that you fill your roster on entry-level contracts. Like, you want one, maybe two every year if you're the Vancouver Canucks to come in and make an impact and be able to prove a lot of people wrong. But Marino would be an interesting one. I think that, like you mentioned, Matt, his name has been linked to this team for quite some time. If they're able to go and make something work to try and get it done, I think that, players on this team would welcome it with open arms, and I think the fan base would too.
Do they have like a deal in a drawer for Tyler Myers? Do you anticipate that it's just a matter of when with Tyler Myers?
Probably. I think that, as much as the agent might say and the team might say we haven't talked and there's no deal, we haven't even got anything to the table yet, you look at it and all signs point in that direction. He's a guy that played some of his best hockey this season. And, we know in his personal life of a reason why he wants to stay here in Vancouver as well. And another thing, guys, he's a leader on that team. It may not look like it on some nights on the ice, but off the ice, he is a leader in that room. He's a person that guys gravitate towards too, and bounce ideas off him. And he's a guy that has a lot of experience in the National Hockey League. And if you're getting Tyler Myers at $2.5-3 million on a 2 or on a 3-year deal, I think you go ahead and make that move all day.
Agreed. There's a lot of smoke around Jake DeBrusk to one of the Alberta teams. Of course, his dad works there in Edmonton. Are you buying that? Like, do you think the Canucks are a player on DeBrusk, or do you think he's already got his targets in sight?
It's funny when we do these things because each and every year we sit and talk about the players that have had their names linked to the Vancouver Canucks. And yes, Jake DeBrusk is there once again. His dad works in Edmonton, covers the Oilers, and obviously he's had a pretty good National Hockey League career in Louis. It would be interesting. Like, if the Oilers are going to go and get Jake DeBrusk, it's say bye-bye to Adam Henrique. Is that your guy that it's probably going to walk, right? What's going to happen with Evander Kane there in Edmonton? He's got a couple of years left. Like, is that going to trend in a different direction for Evander and the Oilers? So I think the Canucks should be in. I think that they're at least they should owe it to themselves to have a conversation and see what the fit could be. I think he's a good player. I think that, he plays hard on both sides of the puck. I think that he can put the puck in the net at any given time. Kind of a streaky goal scorer in that sense, but if the fit were to work, say it doesn't work with a guy like Elias Pettersson, you can see a guy like Jake DeBrusk and JT Miller having some success as a duo on the Canucks top line as well.
I'm noticing a lot of skepticism on your behalf, Irf. And ultimately, they got to sign somebody. Like, they do have cap space. Somebody's going to end up a Vancouver Canuck on July 1st.
Is their money not good?
Who are you going to overpay?
Well, they're going to overpay somebody.
Are you going to overpay? Like, okay, so Jake Guentzel, I think, is out, to be completely honest. Jake DeBrusk is probably your next best option. You're not overpaying a 34-year-old Tyler Toffoli. Like, you're just not doing that. I don't think you can. I don't think you should, to be completely honest. And I know your poll question, guys, I think it was Tyler Mott and Chris Tanev there as well. I get the allure with Chris Tanev. I really do. But he's going to want his money. And you're not overpaying for Christopher Tanev, who I think to this day still has never played an 82-game regular season. Yes, he's great in the playoffs. And yes, he's done a lot here for the Vancouver Canucks. And like, okay, penalty killer in Tyler Mott. But other than that, really, like, he's a guy that's going to look to cash in as well. So it's going to be interesting for this team, right? And I think that without having a pick until 95, if you're the Vancouver Canucks, there's going to be a lot of sitting around at that table in Vegas waiting for something to happen. And I think their focus needs to be unrestricted free agency. Maybe there is a name out there that the Canucks are really interested in. But of the ones that we just mentioned, all of them that we went through, I think it's going to be tough to make some of those work.
Is McKayev in training camp? Do they make a move there to create the cap space?
I'll counter this to both of you. Who wants Ilya Mikheyev? If
That's it.
the player in Detroit, his name's not coming to me.
Jake Wallman. Yeah.
If Wallman costs a second-round pick at $3 million, what does Ilya Mikheyev cost at $11 million? What's left in real money? I think.
Well, and Wallman had more goals as a defenseman than Mikheyev had as a winger.
So I mean, good for Dan Milstein to go and get the permission to go and facilitate a trade, but who wants Ilya Mikheyev?
Yeah, no.
Who really does?
No, they have the Canucks over the barrel there. I think they may just have to hope for a bounce back season and retain him. Marvelous stuff, Irf. Busy week. You're going
to touch Martinook?
Yeah,
we touched it. Yes.
Yeah, I think it'd be a good fit, to be completely honest. I really do. I think that, he's a guy that can play up and down the lineup. He's a guy that's proven that he can score in the playoffs in Carolina. And what, $3 million, $3.5 million for a guy like him? Maybe a little bit less than that.
You see, Irf, Grady gets these names in his head, and he just can't let go of some of the names.
Oh, is that what it is, eh?
He wants you to please sign Jordan Martinook today, if you could.
Hey, he played for Tocchet in Arizona.
See?
Okay, but if we're going by that and who's played for whom and the relationship with the front office, we could sit here all day and name an all-star team. And I get it. And I like the allure of being able to sit here and play armchair GM, but we have to look at it in the reality of it. And the reality of this hockey team is they're not going to come back as assembled. They were 1 win away from the conference finals, and they right now are worse than where they were because of who you're going to lose, right? If you lose Elias Lindholm, you're not better. You lose a guy like Nikita Zadorov, you're not better. Those are two big holes that you need to fill, figuratively and realistically. So how are they going to do it? It's completely going to be on them, but it's going to be a fun time. I think July 1st is going to be interesting because there's a lot of teams out there that have a lot of money, and I'm not entirely sure the Canucks are going to be able to compete with some of them.
I think you're right. Don't get Grady started on Lawson Krause.
That's right. Oh my God.
Okay. Oh my God.
Grady might marry Lawson.
Who was the new guy you had this morning?
Ryan Lomberg.
Oh, right.
Why? Because now he has a Stanley Cup?
That's right.
He's a bowling ball.
Yeah.
Great.
All right.
Great. He's a bowling ball. It's great. That's about all he is.
Tocchet guy.
Hey, keep an eye on Zucker. They had some interest at the deadline on Zucker. He's free agent, and he may come in at a far more digestible contract than some of these other guys.
But does he even excite you? Is he going to push your team over the edge, Matt?
No. Well, look. Hey, Irf, last year, look who they signed.
Yep.
Okay, in free agency. Carson Soucy, Ian Cole, Teddy Bluger, Pius Suter. Did anybody from last year's free agent crop excite you? No.
Carson Soucy did because it showed up a need for them. Yeah, it did. I think it did. And on the deal that they got for him, I think that was a need for them.
Irf is on the opposite end of the spectrum of Grady. Grady wants fourth liners and all fourth liners, and Irf wants all first team all-stars.
Well, no, but my point is that they had a very responsible, very professional off-season last year. Yeah. They had holes on their hockey team. They filled them with good, if not great players. They signed those good, not great players to fair contracts. Did we spend a single minute this year sweating a free agent contract from last summer, gentlemen? No. Because they had a sense of, here's what we got to do to fix the club. We're not blowing our brains out. We're going to get quantity over quality, and it works. If they have another similar offseason, I am A-okay with that.
Yes, but who are the names that are out there? Like you mentioned, those guys that were available to them. Like there's not a lot of guys that are out there that are going to be available like that are going to be able to come here on a team-friendly deal.
Come on. You're right that the flat cap suppressed tickets a little last year. I will absolutely grant that, but I still think there's some good fair buys in free agency that if you have the discipline, and I think that'll be the big thing. And when I say discipline with this franchise, I mean somebody has to keep the owner away, right? Like somebody has to keep the owner from going, oh, making more money for this guy. I love him. No. Execute a good professional plan, signing fair market value contracts. I think there will be some of them.
I have all
They may
for
not.
this front office. I really do. I think that what they've done and what you just alluded to before last year, or sorry, in free agency last year, are some very good things. You look at the trades that they made this year and what they were able to do and how they were able to integrate themselves into this team. It's just going to be difficult. I really do think it. And I just think that. And I just think that, especially in a Canadian market, I've talked to people that have submitted no trade lists. A lot of those no trade lists have Canadian teams on them.
Sure.
So
what I'm saying is, of that second tier of wingers, DeBrusk, Bertuzzi, Teravainen, Arvidsson, Toffoli, blah, blah, blah. If one of them gets priced down because the other guys are more attractive to teams, sign that guy. What I'm saying is, if you're in on Pesce and you don't like that where the price is going on Pesce, or Pesce says no to you, look at a guy like Carrier. Going to be about 3 years. Going to be about $4 million. Can play second pair right side.
All I know this, guys, and I think this is 1,000% true. The money will be spent on somebody.
Oh yeah,
the money's going to be spent. The money's going to be spent, and there's going to be people that are not going to like the deals. Like that. That's for damn sure.
Of course not. But let's not fool ourselves into thinking we're a finishing piece away from being a Stanley Cup champion. There are still a multitude of holes on this team, and your mission is to go out and fill those holes in free agency with contracts that are going to age well and not handcuff you from improving the team next summer and the summer thereafter.
Unless there's a trade to come as well. We'll see.
So there's
my biggest thing is, are they going to get a backup goalie? Or is it going to be Shelov's? Like, that's my thing. Because is Shelov's going to be, does it have to be, or are they going to want him to play in the American League some more?
I think it has to be Shelov's because of, the salary structure, because he's earned it. And you go out and you get another organizational goalie, basically a number 3, more veteran guy to be your AHL goaltender. Bring Tolopilo along, and if you have an injury,
it's a risk, but it's one they have to take.
No, I think it's one they have to take. We were talking to them about them taking this risk last year.
Yeah.
So I think it's appropriate after what you saw from Shelov's in the playoffs. Fun times.
Right.
Good conversation.
Absolutely.
Thanks for this.
No problem. Anytime.
Northlands Golf Course. Download the free app and book tee times with a touch of your thumb. And while you're on course, open the app for hole-by-hole GPS and track your score. 6 to 90-day reservations. Jump the queue. Lock in your date for $10 per player booking fee. Limited daily availability. Check it all out. golfnorthlands.com. Great Clips is the official hair salon of the National Hockey League. There are 37 salons in Vancouver and the Lower Mainland, all Canadian-owned and operated. Download the app and find the nearest to you. When you're up next for a cut, you'll get a ready next text. Great Clips. It's going to be great. Now by former Vancouver Canuck, TSN hockey analyst, Mr. Frank Corrado, who was down on the ice,
intrepid
doing all
reporter,
the interviews, asking all the questions. He's expanding.
Yeah, you guys, you can call me a reporter, a broadcast journalist, and Matt, we can call you Ace. What's happening, Ace?
Thank you, buddy. Appreciate it.
He's still answering Carter's line. Hey, blah, blah, blah. It's Ace.
Hey, Frank, it's Ace.
That's I expect nothing less from you now. Every time you introduce yourself, hey, it's Ace Sekeres.
Stop.
What was it? Pitching wedge from 110?
Yeah, right.
I'll give it this was
it was a big boy.
It's an easy hole that wasn't set up easy that day. It was a good hole one.
Attaboy. Congrats. Congratulations. That's awesome.
Thank you. But it's not about me, Frank. It's about you. Or it's at least about the Florida Panthers and Lou. We caught the conversation. What was it like being down there and taking that in, and particularly your moments there with your ex-teammate here in Vancouver, Roberto?
Yeah. I mean, listen, so I was with McLennan, who's, one of his best friends, ex-teammates. Duthie and Lou are pretty tight. And I think Lou looked at me and kind of did a double take. It's like, I kind of think I know this guy. I can't really place him. But anyways, it was nice. We had the group hug after. You know what it feels like when you're down on the ice there? And it was a new experience for me. You feel like you're almost imposing on all these other people's incredible moment. And you're almost like, okay, am I in the way? Are we pestering people? Are we bothering people? And like when you play, right? Like your kind of dream goal is to win the Stanley Cup. So it's really cool to be around, that celebration and all that stuff. But it kind of almost feels like you're maybe not hijacking it, but you're like, these guys earned this moment. You know, I played in the league. Now I'm standing on the ice next to them while they've earned it. It's a weird feeling. If you feel like a pigeon a
By the
little
time
bit,
you guys
which is a very normal feeling for me.
By the time you guys got out there, I think it was appropriate. You know, it's a little bit tougher when you're broadcasting the game and you're out there immediately after, because then the players want nothing to do with you. They are still in the throes of the intense celebration. You guys, because you're not the rights holder, get invited, you know, a few minutes later.
Yeah.
And by that point, they've had their moment. I think they're ready to chat about it at that point, aren't they?
Pretty much. Yeah. Everyone. And you know what? All the families are out there, the kids. It's really cool. Like, I think it goes. From and port system for all these guys, and it was pretty cool. Like, we got some great quotes from, like, we got to talk to Lou, Verhaeghe, Bennett, Kachuk. You know, the thing that those three guys said, and they all used the same word, free. Like, they felt like in Game 7, for some reason, they were able to play more free than they did in Games 4, 5, and 6. And I mean, it showed. Like, I would describe it this way: the Florida Panthers were more like the Florida Panthers than the Edmonton Oilers were like the Edmonton Oilers in that Game 7. You know, like, whatever the Panthers do that makes them great, they did it in Game 7, and the Oilers couldn't do what makes them great in Game 7.
And the opposite was true. The opposite was true in Game 7, and that the Oilers, for the first time, they had the pressure of trying to win the cup.
Right.
For 3 nights, they just had the pressure of not losing the cup. They had no expectation upon. No, we can't do it, right? Then all of a sudden, you can win the cup tonight. It changed for them too.
Yeah, and the other thing, like, so their focus, which is a great point you make, their focus in Game 7 was not singularly just on what's happening on the ice anymore. Now they had to deal with what Florida was dealing with, where Games 4, 5, and 6, family was flying to Edmonton, to Florida, to Edmonton, like, dealing with all that kind of stuff, still having to play the game. That was the first time they were really on an equal playing ground as far as what's happening on the ice and off the ice, because Edmonton had to do that. Actually, Matthew Tkachuk brought up a good point with us too, and he noted that last year they had to do the extra flight because they had to go start the series in Vegas, and he felt like that extra flight, you know, played a little bit of a factor. And he goes, that extra flight for Edmonton, don't kid yourself, like, that's, you know, that's a 6-hour flight, whatever it is. He goes, that's something we remembered from last year in that series, and they had to do it and we didn't.
Yeah. We were kicking this around yesterday, Frank, and perhaps it's not as obvious with this Panthers team as it has been with previous Cup champions, but are there any Stanley Cup lessons here, like in terms of team building, in terms of style of play? Like, is there anything that jumps out to you that you think other teams might mimic going forward or try to mimic in pursuit of a cup?
You have to defend at a very high level with a lot of urgency to do so. And, you know, I think it's great in the regular season. You got teams that play, you know, run and gun, a lot of point getters, all that kind of stuff. Let me ask you something. So stay with me here. I'm gonna galaxy brain this for you for a second. Game 7, Stanley Cup Final. Okay, we all played that in street hockey, right? Did we not? We all did. And now you get Game 7, Stanley Cup Final in the NHL. Both those situations, if you take yourself back to your old street hockey days, what would change when someone said last goal wins or this is Game 7? Like, what would change within that game? All of a sudden, there was guys blocking shots. There was way more urgency defensively. It never went to
in the snowbank.
You know what I mean? It never went to, oh, I got to stretch out for this breakaway pass, or, you know what I mean? So now you get to Game 7, and the team that played better defensively, that had that kind of game plan, they're the team that won. And you could say that is true for the whole playoffs, where, you know, like, that was the backbone of how they play. And they basically steamrolled their way to the final. And in the final, they get obviously Edmonton brings it to Game 7. But I mean, if you're a team that's building this offensive juggernaut and you're going to roll the dice and just say, we'll just be good enough defensively, I don't think that gets it done in the playoffs.
So,
Like it turns into a very defensively minded game.
Well, it's funny you say that because I was thinking about this yesterday on the drive up to the golf course. First of all, if you're talking about relentless defensive effort, that should bode well for the Vancouver Canucks and what Tocchet is trying to implement system-wise here and culture-wise here. And I'd love you to take that on. But also, Frank, please don't tell me this is a turn back to defensive hockey, because the long history of Stanley Cup champions, offense has carried the day over defense for the most part. Typically, the best offensive players break through and win cups, if not multiple cups. The Jersey Devils trap teams, the St. Louis Blues that didn't really have a pure premium offensive superstar or at least offensive center ice superstar. They have been the outliers.
But that's the double-edged sword. Is you need offense to break through the great defense.
Well, is the forecast more that people are going to look at this and go, "Wow, the way Maurice got them all to play defense"? Are we taking a turn back to defensive hockey?
I don't think we're taking a turn. Like, you still need superstars, you still need offense. No one's going to deny that. Getting that group or those types of players to buy into it means a lot. Like, look at the Oilers. The Oilers didn't change anything about their core. It's the same core that had been going out there and losing to Vegas at 5-on-5 and getting steamrolled by Colorado, right? But they surrounded them with some different players, but as a group, that team bought into defense is going to come first, and then we're going to play our offense next, and we're restricted when we do so. So I don't think it's a change in the way, the game necessarily needs to be played tactically X's and O's, where all of a sudden now we're going back to the New Jersey Devils of the early 2000s. I just think it's a mentality for those top guys to say that priority number one is going to be being on the right side of the puck. It's going to be making sure I got to take this hit to make the play, or I got to make the hit. That's the number one priority. And then the other offensive stuff, which might come a little easier to guys, that's going to sort itself out at the right time. But I think that's more, it's about getting your offensive guys and the group as one to do that first and everything second.
So how similar is that to your understanding to what Tocchet's trying to do here with the Canucks?
I mean, he's not a dumb guy. Like, he's a pretty smart coach. Like, you guys listen to him talk all season long. The stuff he talks about, like, he's very honest, but he's right about a lot of the stuff that he's saying. So, that's exactly the kind of stuff that he's trying to hammer home. It's like you have these certain non-negotiables that you just do away from the puck, that you do when you take care of the puck, and make the right plays with it. And then that will lead to your opportunities. If you start forcing things offensively, now, instead of the other team having to work to get the puck back, it's bonus time for them because they got the puck back. Like, okay, let's talk about Game 7. Okay, so we're sitting there in the first period, and I'm writing down my biggest takeaways of that period. So Florida was more physical. Florida looked faster than they had in the last 3 games. That was for sure. The other thing that really came to mind was the top 2 lines for the Panthers played the best first period, and they played their best game that they had played in a while. But the thing that I thought about after was, how come McDavid didn't have the puck much in the first?
Mm-hmm.
Like, how come I didn't see that? And then it dawned on me, those first 2 lines for the Panthers, when they had the puck, they connected more, whether it was, tape to tape stuff or putting it to an area where someone can skate onto it. So, kind of executed better with the puck. Edmonton wasn't able to just, get it and send McDavid, get it and send Draisaitl and whoever. Like, they had to work to get it back. So the skill is still going to be a big part of it, Matt, because if you don't have skilled players, you can't do that. You can't put the puck to places where you're going to get it back. You can't make all those plays and execute. But Florida, the 3 previous games, it was like, shovel this into the middle. Nope, Edmonton has it. Puck off the wall, doesn't work. Edmonton has it. Pinch, no support. Edmonton has it. That wasn't happening in Game 7. Right. So as much as it's defensive minded, but still with your skill involved, if that makes sense.
That's exactly where I was going to go, is that it's an evolution. We talked about this a couple of days ago that, for years, the big man was starting to get doubted a little bit. and we were starting to tote the smaller players are getting a chance because they're speedy and they're skilled. But now the big guys are also speedy and skilled, and it was sort of an evolution to that perfect player. I wonder if we're going to take an overarching lesson that I can hear here is that you want a superstar that is super defensively responsible as well. Like, are we in the Patrice Bergeron era here that he ushered in, where unless you're Connor McDavid, and even if you're Connor, you got to play defensively as well, and that's what Barkov does.
I think Barkov's a very interesting conversation now. Like he was outstanding in the playoffs, and I agree with you. Like and McDavid and the Oilers this year, that was the thing that really clicked for them. That was the thing that really changed, was that the leaders were going to buy into this kind of, we're going to defend hard, and we've learned over the years in our experiences that what we're doing is not working, so we kind of have to do it a different way. Like, and I think we talked about this, but it's worth reiterating. Sasha Barkov, every year NHLPA players poll comes out and the players keep saying he's underrated. And we're like, we lose our minds. Now this year it's like, we got to give him, maybe he's underrated because he's a top 20 guy. No, he's a top 7 guy. Anyways, we've talked about this. I know the thing about the Panthers and when it comes to, how they changed, they won a President's Trophy 2 years ago, right? Though they have 122 points, something crazy like that. And then Paul Maurice takes over, team is different. They go down to 92 points. Then they go to the Stanley Cup Final. Then this year, they go to the Stanley Cup Final again. Like, I think there was a realization there that the run and gun, high octane stuff, like, wasn't going to work. And they found a way to make it work with a lot of the same players. Like, there's obviously a very drastic change with Weegar and Huberdeau out and Tkachuk coming in. But I don't know, there's a lot of the guys that were there that made it happen still.
Here's what I would say, fellas. If we are moving towards a world where the Alexander Barkovs and the Patrice Bergerons of the world are the carrying championship piece, that is not good for this sport, because it means a less aesthetically pleasing brand of hockey is carrying the day, and it means that your pure offensive superstars who transcend a little more aren't winning championships.
Hold on. Can I cut in there? Can I cut in there quickly? Please. Do you Sasha Barkov's, I keep calling him Alex, Sasha Barkov's assist against the Rangers when he flips the puck up, bats it down, and like, this guy's not a plumber. Like, this guy's highly skilled.
I'm not saying he isn't capable of making a spectacular play. Same goes with Patrice Bergeron, but they're not doing it with the regularity of people like Nathan McKinnon and Connor McDavid.
He's still an 85, 90-point player.
He's a damn good player, Blake. Don't get me wrong. But if you're paying to see an NHL player tomorrow, how far down the list is Alexander Barkov?
But I'll say this, though, Matt, is that's in the playoffs. And when the playoffs, when the enormity of the game carries the day, we said this about the Oiler Canuck game, that objectively speaking, it wasn't necessarily the most aesthetically pleasing series, and yet everybody was on the edge of their seats because they were so tight and kind of crazy. Like, in the regular season, Frank, I think we're still going to see offense carry the day, but you have to be able to flick that switch in a playoff mode and do it relatively seamlessly.
Okay, hold on. Let me ask you this:
carries the day more often than not in the playoffs too, though.
It does. If Sasha Barkov wanted to. Okay, if Sasha Barkov wanted to, he could say, forget about defense for this season. I'm going to play offense. He probably could be a 100-point guy. Yeah. Like, I just think that's the way he's wired, right? Mm-hmm. And for right or wrong, Connor McDavid was wired very similarly this year. And Connor McDavid had what? Did he have 130 points? Did he get there?
Down year.
He had 130 points in a down year. Right. And he focused on defense. And then in the playoffs, he focused on defense first, and he had 42 points. And the only two people he was chasing are Gretzky and Lemieux. Like, I still think there's a place for it. It's not that Sasha Barkov is now all of a sudden going to be the face of what it means to be a winner. We're going to get someone different next year, and someone different the year after that, probably. But this is what worked with this team this year. Nathan McKinnon worked with the Colorado Avalanche. Vegas was a different build. Tampa was totally different. I just think if Braden Point wanted to be, Mitch Marner plus, he probably could be, but he plays a different kind of way. And I think the same goes for Sasha Barkov.
All right. Let's move on to the Vancouver Canucks because this is a big week ahead. Zadorov, 5 years, 5.2, 5.3 million. Do you sign that deal, Frank?
Whew. I don't know. I don't think so. I don't know. I think it's rich. Like, I think that's a rich deal. And you know what? I think there's someone that's going to. But
For
5
sure.
years is a long time.
Yeah.
And even with the cap going up 5.2, 5.3 for a guy that ideally would be playing on my third pair, maybe, pinch hitting on the second pair. I don't know. I think that's a lot of money. Like, I think I can find someone massive to play on the third pair and cross-check the shit out of guys for half the price.
Hasn't the
I don't know.
Chatfield and DeMello contracts told us though that the contracts are going to be pretty big this year? Like
the Chatfield one at $3 million is probably a little bit of a discount. Like, I think he's
That's what
he's
I'm
probably
saying.
worth. Yeah, like he's
If
probably worth
that's
more.
the
The
hometown
DeMello one
discount
is
price.
interesting.
Oof.
The DeMello one is interesting. So if you watch Winnipeg play, or if you watch DeMello play, there's nothing. There's nothing sexy about his game. He's not a flashy skater. Doesn't do anything with the puck. Like, offensive numbers aren't great. But he's played with Thomas Chabot. Thomas Chabot has had basically the best years that he's had playing with DeMello, and DeMello played well. DeMello's gone to Winnipeg, played with Morrissey. Morrissey has had his best years, and that pair, they crush their minutes basically on a night-to-night basis. So if there's one thing we learned, is that this guy can play with your number one offensive D and help them out. So for $4.9 million, I think in a vacuum, DeMello at 4.9, you're like, but then you realize the impact of the game. You're like, okay, I get it. And he's 30 years old. So this will be the last big one. 31.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now he's ancient at 31.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. So now the market's set, right? So I think for UFA, right? So DeMello's a first pair guy. He's getting 4.9, but Zadorov's massive. He was really good in the playoffs. He can do things that other guys can't do. So does that put him at the same price or more? That's my question to you guys.
I think DeMello took a little bit less to stay in Winnipeg. I think he's a little more, Frank. I think he will fetch a little more. At least.
Yeah, I could see that. I could see it. I think someone ultimately is going to give Zadorov more than $5 million, and maybe they tack on an extra year. Like 5 years feels like a lot too, but I would be wanting to go less. But he's like, listen, he's been banging the drum, right? Like we know there's going to be demand for him, and I'm curious to see who goes there with him and what team they are and where they're at in their kind of place in the league.
Would you go to 4 years for Chris Tanev?
I would go to 5 or
what? Would you?
Yes, and I'll tell you why.
Wow.
If you have money, if you're a team that has money, if I'm a good team and I want to win, I would be willing to tack on extra years for Chris Tanev. You know why? Because there's a one-way ticket at some point to old Robida Island.
That's true. That is true. Okay.
And if I can get the cap hit to a manageable number, I would look at that and say, I need this guy. Let's say you feel like you need Chris Tanev. I need him for the next 3 years, but I won't get him on a 3-year ticket. So if I got money and I'm willing to do it as an owner, there's a Robida Island sunscreen bottle and lawn chair and umbrella waiting for you at some point. But I need you for the first 3 years.
First of all, I don't believe Robida Island is allowed per the CBA. If you're talking about having a player
talking LTIR,
you're talking LTIR.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes.
So it's honest. It's not too dissimilar than committing the 7 years to the 30-year-old, knowing that the last 2 years are probably going to be shit.
Right.
You're going to have to deal with the work.
But you also know that, like, it's an inevitability with Chris Tanev. Like, the guy will retire injured. He's not going to retire.
Well, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And then for him, his incentive is, you're going to give me, I don't know, what would Chris Tanev get? Like, I don't know, 4.8, 5 million, something
4
like
or
that.
5, 4 or 5 AFP.
Okay, so call it 4 or 5. You're telling me now I'm going to get 4 or 5 for an extra 2 years while I'm on LTIR? I don't know. There's a little added incentive to sign that deal. I think you would need the right owner to do that, who'd be willing to part with that kind of money. But anyways, that's my long way of saying I would really want Chris Tanev. And
Sure.
yes, I'd be willing to have him for 3 years.
It's a good frame. Last scouting report for me, Tyler Toffoli. Because he works, the guy has an uncanny ability to put the biscuit in the basket, and yet he doesn't have any one particular skill that leads you to believe how he gets it done. Like, he's just got a nose for the net. He's got a decent shot, but he doesn't move well.
He's got pretty good hands. He's good in short areas. He
kills penalties too, or he did. Like when he was in LA, he was killing penalties.
But that foot
I like
speed
Toffoli.
only going one direction, Frank. It's got to be.
He's 32, coming off 33 goals, and the AFP analytics prediction is 4 by 6 million for Toffoli.
I would think he gets less than that. I'm not sure he gets 6. Maybe not much less, but yeah, I think that's probably right in the wheelhouse. Listen, if you need someone who can score on a power play, like give you, I don't know, he's going to score 30 goals
probably,
and he's pretty trustworthy guy. Like Daryl Sutter used to trust this guy to go kill penalties on LA when they were winning championships. Like I would think over the years, like that didn't just fall by the wayside. He's a responsible player who's going to give you 30. Yeah, he's not the fastest, but you probably don't need him to forecheck and run guys through the boards. You could probably put someone on his line that's going to do that. I like Toffoli. I think I would have liked him for the Canucks this year, and I still would have liked him for the Canucks next year. Like I'm not so big of a buyer beware on Tyler Toffoli because I think I know he's coming. I think he's coming as advertised. Like I think you're going to get 30 goals, and you're going to get a guy that you can play, and you don't have to protect and make sure he's not out there against certain opponents.
He did not kill penalties for Winnipeg or New Jersey, and in fact, didn't kill them much in Calgary either. So I think the shorthanded days are behind.
Those are over. Those days are over. Yeah.
But no, you're right. No, you're right. Like we used to say this about him when he got here, Blake. Like he's a pretty heady player. Like he knows where to be, and when he gets the puck on his stick in short areas, he makes pretty good decisions with it too.
Well, it's like
there's not a lot of dumb plays. There's not a lot of like unaware plays. He's
force it. Like he's not gonna jam you up and force it into bad spots. Like he's pretty intelligent. And that kind of leads to him being productive because he's not flying around the ice, but he is kind of thinking his way around the ice.
Right. Yeah. Efficiencies.
Yeah. Marvelous stuff. Buddy, it was fantastic seeing you do the Stanley Cup Final. It has been a marvelous year, and it keeps on keeping on here with what will be a busy week ahead, draft and free agency. We will catch up next week, Frankie.
Blake, Ace, we'll talk next week.
Hey, everybody, if you're enjoying what you're seeing here, then follow along with Sekeres Price on YouTube. I promise more content coming.
The kids call it subscribe on YouTube.
Well, how about liking it?
Do that as well. Smash it right now.